Good afternoon. I hope you are well. Welcome to another episode of the NLP Talks podcast. And today you've got me. Welcome along to anybody that is joining me live. I am hoping that some people will come and join me. I'm just going to pop across to YouTube just to check that we are broadcasting live. Yes, we are. Amazing. So just bear with me if you're joining me live as I share that link with everybody. For some reason my computer is playing up, so bear with me while I just try and sort out the technology. Right, just bear with me. One more place I need to go. You've got to love technology, right? So let's just pop that in there. Amazing. We're done. Let's close all that down. So I'm back. Welcome to this episode of the NLP Talks podcast. And for those of you that are not aware, what I always do with the podcast episodes is I stream them live. Hi Phil, nice to see you. I stream them live. For some reason I couldn't stream it on Facebook, so we are streaming on YouTube. I'm going to record it today. Then I'll send it off to the editor, and then the official release will come. But some people like to watch the video of the podcast, and so I always stream it live. Now, today I'm going to be doing a session which is just me, and I'm going to talk about what's stopping you getting what you want in an area of your life. Now, this podcast episode is going to be quite interactive. So if you haven't already got a pen and a piece of paper, I can tell you now you're going to want that as we go through some exercises. I'm going to get you to do some exercises along with me. Now, if you're listening to this podcast episode and you are a coach, then these are some exercises which you may well want to share with some of your clients. And if you're not a coach, then you may well want to do these yourself as some personal development and reflection as we go through. So there's a few exercises and a few things I've never shared on the podcast before. And so I'm sure some of my students will be joining us live as well. So if you are joining live, please say hello so that I know that you are here. It's always lovely to know who's around. Now, what's stopping you? It's a question that I think I ask my coaching clients a huge amount. So you may or may not know, I actually have two businesses. So I have Unleash Your Potential Limited, which is our certified NLP training business. And I also have my coaching business, which is called, rather novelly, Laura Evans Coaching and Mentoring Limited, which is the other company, which is where I do my coaching. And if you want to go and check out either of those websites, unleashyourpotential.org.uk or thelauraevans.co.uk. You'll find both of those websites. So in my coaching practice, I end up asking that question a huge amount. What stops you? And there's all sorts of reasons why people are not getting the results they want in an area of their life. Now, this could be in their business. It could be in their career. Hi, Liz. Nice to see you. It could be in their personal relationships with their significant other. It could be their health, fitness, and well-being. Finances. So many areas of our life. And a lot of the time when I coach people, they come to me because they have a problem in one or more areas of their life. And one of my first questions, what stops you? And here's the first kind of little bombshell, if you like, which I'm going to drop, which is your life, okay, or a particular area of your life is a reflection of the sum total of the decisions that you did or did not make. Okay, so your results in a given area of your life are the sum total of the decisions that you did or did not make in that area of your life. Because here's the thing, whether we choose to accept this or not, we are the captain of our own ship. And Your life is your life. You can sit there and you can blame other people, circumstances, the environment, governments. I mean, here in the UK and America, there's elections all going on at the moment. You can blame everyone or anything else. You can blame your past, your childhood. But the reality is, as you sit here today listening to me talk, where you are at right now in any given area of your life is the sum total of the decisions which you did or did not take. Now, this is with love. This is not with judgment. This is not a criticism. This is for me about objective observation, which is I am where I am because of the decisions which I have made or not made in my life. And the reality is, if you want to change an area of your life, maybe it's not quite where you want it to be, then the only person that can change it is you. Now, that sounds all very easy. Oh, Laura, yes, that's easy for you to say. You know, you've done all the mindset work. You're the kind of person that, you know, does all of this. But here's the thing. It's actually not that difficult to get what we call a paradigm shift, as in a shift in the way that you look at things. Because I'll tell you now from past experience, and all my students will tell you this as well, is that when you start to change how you look at things, the things that you look at start to change. Okay, and if you're joining me live, say hello and let me know that you're here. And do you agree? Right, I'd like this episode to be quite interactive. Don't worry if you're listening to this on the actual podcast. I will be letting you know what everybody's saying as we're going along. But do you agree with me? Do you agree that as you change how you look at things, the things you look at change? And isn't that interesting? I mean, Richard Bandler, right, one of the founders of NLP, I'd just like to read one of his quotes. And if you follow me on social media, I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. If you follow me on social media, you'll know I put a post out last week, which was this quote: "The quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask yourself." You see, it's very easy to sit there and just go, oh, well, it is what it is, Laura. If, though, you're willing to ask yourself some questions, and sometimes questions that may feel a little uncomfortable, but if you are willing to ask yourself those questions, it is entirely possible that you could get a shift. Now, my aim out of this episode is by the time I leave you at the end of this episode, I want you to have had a shift, okay? Now, are you up for this, okay? Because if you're not, this is probably not the right episode for you. But if you are up for reviewing an area of your life and trying to work out what it is that is stopping you making progress in that area of your life, if you're up for that, give me a yes in the comments if you're here to do that. And if you're listening to this live, I'm going to assume you're saying yes. On the recording, I'm assuming you're going to say yes too. Okay. So grab yourself a pen and a piece of paper, and I want you to draw a big circle on it. Okay. Now, if you need to rummage around in your desk, do that now. You're probably going to want to make some notes from this episode anyway. Do say hello in the chat if you're joining me live. And let me know that you're here. Okay, but I need to get probably a couple of bits of paper actually to be able to do this. Okay, so what I want you to do is essentially draw a big circle. Okay, and then what I want you to do is I want you to divide it into 8 sections. Okay, so just do this, okay, on your piece of paper. Okay, and I want you to put 1 in the middle and 10 on the outside. Now, you don't need to do it for each of the lines, okay? Now, this, if you're not familiar, is the basis of what we call a wheel of life, okay? Now, if a client ever comes to me for coaching and they're not really sure on what area of their life they want to work on, this is often where I start, okay? Now, I'm going to see, for those of you joining me live, I'm going to see if my computer will allow me to share a Wheel of Life document with you without kicking me off the live stream. No, it looks like it's not going to behave today. Okay, anyway, doesn't matter. What I'll do on the podcast page when this goes live, I'm going to put a link to a document called the Wheel of Life. Okay. Now, what I would like you to do is get your pen, and each of these 8 sections, I want you to label them. Okay. So I'm going to give you some examples of some very common ones. You can feel free to use these or not, as the case may be. Now, health is a very popular quadrant of life. Whether you call it health, well-being, fitness, whatever you call it, that might be one segment for you. You might have friends as a segment. So these are the people that you hang out with, your friends, your support network, those types of people. I suggest for a lot of people, relationship, as in your relationship with your significant other, may also be another important quadrant in an area of your life. Some of you might have a quadrant that's family. So your family might be one. I'm guessing most of you will have career or business as a quadrant. So by the way, as I'm saying these, I'm actually filling it in myself, okay? So if you're employed, it's probably career. If you are self-employed, it's probably business. So whatever works for you, put in there. Some of you might have a quadrant that says wealth or finances. Again, that might be another quadrant for you. Now, the others, I mean, these are kind of down to you. Some of you might have a quadrant that says maybe fun, leisure, me time. So this is what you do to recharge your soul. I don't know, maybe you have hobbies that you do or something like that. Some of you might have religion or spirituality. That might be a quadrant that's important to you. Some of you might have personal growth as a quadrant, okay? Now, everybody's wheel is going to be different because it's the wheel of, in this case, my life or your life, okay? And when clients come to me and say, oh, my goodness, Laura, my life is a mess, I don't even know where to start, then a wheel of life can be a really good place. Okay, now I'm going to assume that you've drawn this on a piece of paper, okay, and you have got it in front of you. And I now want you to rate each area of your life, okay? So if 1 out of 10 is in the middle and 10 out of 10 is on the outside, where would you put a line for that? So for example, you might say at the moment, my health and well-being, that's about a 5 out of 10, Laura, and then you'll maybe shade in half, okay? Friends, yeah, I mean, that's pretty good to be fair. So I might say, do you know what, that's an 8 out of 10. So I will then use the number 8. Relationships, yeah, that's pretty good. So I'm going to say that's a 10 out of 10. Yeah, that's really where I want it to be. That's brilliant. Career or business in my case, I don't know, maybe I might give that a 7. Okay, and so on and so on. Now you can continue to do this. Now, when you get to a quadrant that's not a 10 out of 10, you've got to ask yourself a question. How has that happened? Okay, and that area of your life is a reflection of the decisions that you did or didn't take in that area of your life. Okay, as I've been saying. So what we've then got to start to ask ourselves is which area of our life is the one that's most important right now for us to make progress in. Okay, now some of the clients I work with will come to me because they want to improve their business performance. I coach a lot of coaches and mentor a lot of coaches that maybe their business is not where they want it to be. And that's the area of their life they want to focus on. Or it might be career. I might be working with a senior manager who just wants to push through to that VP director level and they're stuck. They don't seem to be able to break through to the area that they want. It might be someone that might have come to me and said, you know what, my relationship with my significant other is not where I would want it to be. And what is it that I want? Now, I don't know what area of your life you've chosen. It could be your health and well-being. It could be your business. It could be your, leisure and hobbies. Okay. And in some respects, it doesn't matter what quadrant you've picked because the principles I'm going to share today apply to all of these areas of our life. Pretty much, bar a few exceptions, but pretty much. And this wheel of life is a really good barometer to find out where my coaching clients are when they start working with me. And then sometimes I'll get them to do it partway through, and then sometimes I'll get them to do it at the end as well. So we can really see the progress that we've been able to make. Now, Here comes the next bit, and I'm going to warn you, this might be a little uncomfortable, and it's not meant to be. It's meant to be objective, okay? This is not designed as a session for you to sit there and mentally beat yourself up, okay? Can I just say hashtag warning here, right? This is not, if you're someone that sits there and uses these types of sessions to mentally beat yourself up and go, see, I'm rubbish, no, we're going to come on to all of that. That's not my plan here. Okay, now what I want you to do is pick one area of your life that is not where you currently want it to be. And I want you to look at, really hone in on that one area. Don't try and take the whole of your life in, just pick one area. And I want you to ask yourself this question. As you look back over the last 6 months, let's just do 6 months, okay? If you look back over the last 6 months of that one area of your life, what do you observe in that area of your life? What do you observe? And if it's safe to do so, you could close your eyes as you're doing this, if that's helpful. If it's not safe to because you're driving or something, obviously, please refrain from doing that. But as you observe that area of your life over the last 6 months, with no judgment, this is absolutely about you being objective. So if this was someone else's life and you were looking in objectively observe. Okay. Now, if you're trained in NLP, you might want to do that in a more disassociated way, as in kind of fly out a little bit and look back at that last 6 months. If you're familiar with disassociation and timelines and whatnot, and if you're not, don't worry. But objectively look at that. And as you look at that one area of your life over the last 6 months, I wonder if you could give it a word or an emotion, a label. And if you felt able to share it in the chat today, I would love you to do so, for those of you joining me live. And if you're not joining me live, that's fine. Just write that word down somewhere, okay? Because it's always a bit easier to manage when it's a little bit distant from us, disassociated on a piece of paper rather than in our head and heart, okay? And I wonder, when you think of that label that you've given that area of your life as you consider the last 6 months, I wonder, when you've encapsulated that in a word or a feeling, I wonder, how did that result appear to that person, okay, as you look at that last 6 months? Because how you see things determines what's possible. So, for example, my health and well-being. Okay, now, over the last 6 months, as I objectively observe the last 6 months of my area of my life, and I look at that, I haven't been to the gym as regularly as I would like. There's no judgment to that. There's no need for me to rationalize that, excuse that. It's an observation. I haven't been to the gym that much in the last 6 months. And as I observe that last 6 months of my life, I can absolutely appreciate that I've deprioritized my health and fitness over the last 6 months. And I haven't put myself first. I haven't necessarily made my mental and emotional and spiritual well-being a priority because I've been so busy with work. And I'm not justifying, and I don't want to judge myself for that, but it's an observation that I haven't done as much with that area of my life. And if I was to give that a word as I sit here right now live, and this is real, by the way, I'm not making this up, this is real, as I look at that area of my life, my health and well-being over the last 6 months, the emotion that pops up for me when I do that is the word sad. Not quite sure where that's come from. My unconscious mind has given me that feeling, but I feel a bit sad. I feel as if perhaps I've not given myself as much love as maybe I should have and looked after myself. And the old saying, isn't it? You've got to look after yourself first, put your own oxygen mask on first before. Now, I sit here a little smug because I went to yoga this morning with my wonderful yoga teacher, stroke massage therapy, stroke Reiki master, Michelle, who I know listens to this podcast. So Michelle, hello, love you lots. But I've been and done yoga this morning for an hour and a half. So actually today I have done that. But over the last 6 months, which is what we're looking at, I don't have that pattern. So I then have to sit there and think, okay, so how do the results appear to that person? Well, distracted would be the word I'd give. Okay. Now, the challenge then that we have is, well, what is it then that I'm willing to do to grow in this area? Because this is where we then start to look at this area of our life. Because if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got, right? That's a very famous saying. So the question then that we have to ask ourselves in that area of life is, what is it that we're willing to do to improve, develop, or grow this area of our life? Now, again, I went to yoga this morning, so actually today I'm pretty chuffed. But that's not a habit. That's not something that I'm doing regularly because I get so busy. So the question is, what are we willing to do to grow? Who are we willing to become to enable that improvement to happen? And what is it that we want to have so that we can do that? Be, do, and have. If you've done your master prac training with me, you'll be all familiar with be, do, and have and how important those 3 words are. But I just want to make it quite simple. The question is, are you willing? Are you willing to prioritize? Are you willing to say that this is the area of my life I want to make the most improvement? Because here's the hard truth, ladies and gentlemen listening to this podcast. Most people's challenge is not what they don't know what to do. It's not that they've not watched lots of videos on social media, that they've read the books, that they've done the self-help. That's not the problem. The problem is most people's unwillingness to grow, change, and adapt. That's actually where it's at. Because if I want to improve my health and well-being, using myself as an example, and you'll have your own, if I want to improve that area of my life, I have to be willing to start some things. I have to be willing to stop some things. I have to be willing to adapt. I have to be willing to change. I have to be willing to grow. Because if I'm not willing to grow, change, and adapt, then the reality is I can sit here and look 6 months into the future and nothing will have changed. Because I didn't change anything, because I didn't do anything differently. And that's one of the biggest problems with us as human beings. And I say it with love to myself and to you, is our challenge is our unwillingness to grow, change, and adapt. Now, what sits behind that? Because this is where most coaching stops, okay? So we can do the conscious mind coaching, we can do all of these things. The question, though, is what stops us growing, changing, and adapting? What stops us? What stops you? What stops me? Now, it might be that there is something called secondary gain at play. Now, if you've done courses with me, you'll be all familiar with secondary gain. But secondary gain is where someone gains more by holding on to their problem or the status quo than they perceive, consciously or unconsciously, that they'll gain by letting that problem go or making that change. So you have to start to ask yourself the question, if I have always been like this over the last 6 months, and if I'm likely to be in the future, unless I change something, and I'm unwilling to change something, then what am I getting out of it? What am I getting out of it? What is the payoff to me of this status quo? What is the benefit to me of that story I'm telling myself? Because I can tell you now, you'll have a story you tell yourself just like I've had a story that I've told myself. Because the story I tell myself in relation to my health and well-being is I don't have time. I'm too busy. In fact, if you listen to my language earlier on in the podcast, which is what all great NLP coaches will have done, You'll have noticed I use that as an excuse. The story I'm telling myself is that I don't have time. And at the moment, I'm using my time in other ways. So am I willing to make a change? Am I willing to adapt? Am I willing to grow? Am I willing to say no to some things so that I can say yes to other things? Now, this morning is a great example. I mean, there's a million and one things I could and should be doing in my business today. I mean, if you could see the state of my desk, I mean, I'm glad you can't, but if you could, you'd see there's paper everywhere here. There is so much going on behind the scenes. And if you're a student of mine, I'm going to be coming into the Facebook group later today. We have a closed Facebook group, a community online where all our students hang out. I don't know how many hundreds of us there are in there now, but I'm going to be sharing some stuff with them later. But this morning I made a decision, right? This goes back to the beginning of this podcast episode. I made a decision this morning that my health and well-being was important. And so I got myself to the yoga class because I decided that I needed to do something about it. So I have made a change. But the story I'm telling myself is probably going to keep me stuck if I'm not careful, i.e. I'm too busy, I've got work to do, I've got all these other demands on my life and I just can't. Now, I just can't. We're going to come on to beliefs in a minute, but there will be a whole set of beliefs that will sit behind the story that we're telling ourselves. Now, I'm going to come back to secondary gain in a little while, okay? But as you sit looking at your wheel of life that you did just now, and you've picked your area, you've asked yourself the question about how has that panned out in the last 6 months? And then you've asked yourself the question, what am I willing to do? What am I willing to do? Now, if you're willing to do nothing, then you should accept that you're not willing to do anything. Maybe it's actually not that important area of your life after all. Maybe on reflection, you've gone, do you know what, other things are more important? And if they are, make the decision that it's not important and stop beating yourself up about it, because we're all very good at that too, right? I started the episode, if you joined us partway through, I started the episode talking about your life is a reflection of the decisions that you did or did not take. And we have to be happy with those decisions. And if it's not a priority, it's not a priority. But if it is a priority, the question is, are you willing to make the change? Are you willing to do what it takes? You see, I'm going to talk slightly differently about this just for a moment, because there is a part of me that wants to change. There's probably a part of you that wants to change. And that part of me is really keen to sort out my health and well-being, because actually I know that in a year, 5, 10, 15 years time, the decisions I make now will impact me in the future. The decisions I make now about what I eat, the exercise I do, my mobility, my flexibility, the decisions I make now will impact me. I don't want my partner pushing me around in a wheelchair in 10 years' time because I can't walk because I'm not mobile. But those decisions are now. Life is an accumulation of those decisions. So that part of me that believes it's important to sort out my health and well-being, that part of me needs something from me. Now, this is all going to sound a little bit funny to start, but bear with me. So if that part of me needs the other parts of me collectively to think, feel, do, and act differently. So as you look at your wheel of life and you look at that area of your life where you want to make a change, that part of you needs something from you. And the question is, what is it? What need is it that's not currently being met? And then back to the other question, which is, are you willing to make a change? I mean, let's use a different example. Let's your relationships, right? So let's say you've focused on relationships and your relationship with your significant other is not where you want it to be. And let's say it's a 5 out of 10, hypothetically. You don't want to extrapolate that forward because actually that could take you into areas that you really wouldn't want to happen. So the question is, as you are here today, are you willing? Are you willing to make a change? Are you willing to do that? And if so, that part of you needs to make a change. The rest of you, right? So let me use, again, let's go back to work, because work's a good example, right? So I have to make a decision about working smarter, not harder. I have to stop doing so many hours at work if I'm going to create the time to focus on my health and well-being. Like going to the gym and doing weights or cardio or going to yoga for my flexibility and things like that's not going to do itself. I can't wave a magic wand, right? So I'm going to have to engineer, like I did this morning, a 90-minute gap to go and do the yoga class. So that's a decision that I have made. So for your area of life that you're looking at, that part of you that you want to improve that area of your life, what is it that the rest of you has to change? Okay, in my case, reevaluating perhaps how many hours I'm working and maybe creating the time to do that. Kind of an interesting thought, isn't it? Now, we're going to just leave that there because that's all quite deep and quite meaningful. But let me know in the chat if you're here with me live. Like, is this resonating with you? Is this making sense? Is this provoking you in a good way to think about an area of your life and how you've ended up where you are and what you may or may not be willing to decide to do about that? And if you're listening to this, then I guess I'm sorry you're not here live with me. But yeah, it's quite interesting. Now, I'm going to move on now to talk about an NLP technique, which I've never talked about on the podcast before. And it's something called logical levels. Okay. Now, there are all sorts of versions of logical levels. There is all sorts of different types of logical levels of therapy, blah, 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 right? So, and that's not it. I'm talking here about the model called logical levels. Now, the original work with logical levels was done by Gregory Bateson back in the 50s and 60s. And it was popularized by Robert Dilts in the 80s. And a lot of people attribute Robert Dilts, one of the pioneers of NLP, with logical levels. And Dilts did evolve the work of Gregory Bateson, but Gregory Bateson was actually the creator of it back in the 50s and 60s. Now, to follow along as I'm doing this, what I want you to do is put your wheel of life to one side and get yourself a fresh sheet of paper. And what I want you to do is I want you to draw a triangle. It's going to become a pyramid, by the way, in a minute. Okay, a pyramid. And I want you to put some lines on it to create 5 levels. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Have I done it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we are. This is always the problem when I do the exercises with you all on the podcast. So if you're watching live, you'll see I am showing up a piece of paper with a big triangle right across my A4 sheet of paper. And I've drawn 4 lines to create 5 sections. Now we're going to fill this in, okay, as we go. Now, this is not, by the way, can I just say, this is not to be designed to be a comprehensive teaching session of this model. I'm just using it very quickly here to help us with the purpose of today's podcast episode. So can I just say that first before I get an email from people going, oh my goodness, like you didn't explain that properly. And I'm not doing a teaching session. I just want to help you. Okay. Now, the bottom run, I want you to write the word environment in it. Okay, so just write the environment in the very bottom run. Okay, so the very first thing when we look at any problem, okay, in an area of our life, the very first thing we have to start to consider is what's the environmental factors which have led us to this. So you can ask yourself questions that start with like where or when, where am I, what have I got, all of those types of things, environmental factors. Now, usually the environmental factors are things that we wish we could change, but at this stage, you're not going to wave a magic wand and make them disappear. So your environmental factors will underpin some of the situation that you find yourself in, okay, these circumstances, okay. Now, the next level up from that is we're going to label behaviors, okay. So just write behaviors in this next run. Now, the next part of this model is about your behaviors. It's about your actions. It's about what you are currently doing and in the future what you might do differently. And your behavior, what you do or do not do in any given moment, has a big impact on the results that you might be getting or not getting in an area of your life. So if you're not getting what you want, there is a probability that your behaviors, your actions are having a part to play in those results. Okay. Now, the next level up from that, we're going to call skills and capabilities. Okay. So excuse my handwriting if you're watching this live, but the next one up is skills and capabilities. So this is very much about understanding that when we do or learn anything, we're a novice to start with, and that's to be expected. We don't know what we don't know. And to start with, your skill or capability level in anything might be low, and you can get better at it. So if it's a skill that you can't currently do that you wish you could do, then you could learn. You could go to a class, you could be mentored, you could take a course. There are all sorts of ways about how you could develop a skill that you are yet to master. And the problem for a lot of people is they avoid developing those skills. And it sounds odd to say that, but there's a reason why we might not even get started at times. I'm going to come on to that very shortly. It's a level that people will often get stuck at because they might not even get in the game because they just sit on the sideline because they're not even willing to put themselves in the arena for fear. And we're going to come back to fear because this is a big issue as to why some people don't get the results that they want. Okay. Now, the next run up after that is beliefs. Now, when you see logical levels, some people will label this next level beliefs and values. I'm not going to talk about values today, so I'm just going to write beliefs in that. And your beliefs in any given scenario have a massive, massive impact on the results that you may or may not be getting, because your beliefs determine what you believe is important. And they have a massive, massive bearing on every area of your life. They are essentially perhaps started as thoughts you had, but they've gone from just being thoughts. We don't really think about them anymore because they just are. If someone had a limiting belief that they're not good enough, that's not something that they ponder over anymore. They evaluate, or maybe I am, or maybe I'm not. They believe that if it's a limiting belief. Okay, so it's gone past the thinking stage to become part of the fabric of who they are. And our beliefs solidify our perceptions of things, our perceptions of what is possible and it isn't. You'll often find around beliefs, people just kind of say, well, it just is the way it is. And the problem is that, if you've done courses with me, you'll know I say this a lot, that your beliefs aren't true, but you act as if they're true. And that's what makes them a self-fulfilling prophecy. You may well be familiar with the Henry Ford quote, and I'm now told it's not Henry Ford's quote, but anyway, that's what made it famous. Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're absolutely right. Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're absolutely right. I'm a massive fan of a guy in Australia called Kerwin Ray, and I remember watching him talk about beliefs once on stage on a video, and he encapsulated beliefs so well, because he said basically all your beliefs are lies, so why don't you pick a better set? Now, with an NLP practitioner toolkit, you'll learn how to change beliefs, but it's an interesting concept. Now, I was listening to some training the other day, and I had a sudden realization, because if you write out the word belief or beliefs, can you see that there's a word hidden within the word belief? Let me know if in the chat, if you're watching this live, let me know in the chat, can you spot that there's actually a word hidden within the word belief? And if you can see it, let me know in the chat. 3 letters right in the middle. L-I-E. lie. Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting? Now, it's fascinating when you start to look at this in the context of what we're doing. So you'll often find yourself in terms of your beliefs about this particular problem or challenge that you're facing, you'll often find yourself saying that essentially it's just the way it is. I can't blah, blah, blah because of blah, blah, blah. It's not a question. It's a statement. It is something that you believe. Yeah, it's fascinating. Anyway, listen, I could do a whole episode just on that. So let's move on. Right. Now, the very top run is that of identity. Who am I? Okay. And when you start making any kind of I am statement, otherwise known as I ams, plural, but I am statements, these are when they absolutely act. There's a reason it's the top of the pyramid, right? It acts like a beacon. It directs everything, because when something becomes part of the fabric of who you are as a person, that can be really quite challenging. And your identity guides pretty much everything in any area of your life, who you are. So yeah, Debbie, nice to see you too. I've just seen your comment. Lovely to have you here. So when you look at this model, I want you now to look at this model. And as I said, this is not like a teaching the whole model in its entirety. But if you look at this model in relation to the area we're looking at, so you did your wheel of life, you've picked an area of your life, you asked yourself some questions. I now want you to look at that area of your life in relation to this model and start to work out what really is going on here with this area of your life. And does this tool give you any kind of insights as to where your challenge might be? Because if I use business as an example, I've used a lot of health and fitness today because I know it's quite prevalent for a lot of people. But if I use business as an example, let me work the model through in terms of business. So environment, okay. So if you take a snapshot of any business, there's going to be environmental factors about where I operate the business, how I operate the business. There'll be circumstances that happen around that. I'm currently living across two houses. That has its own challenges. There'll be certain business assets that I have, like my website, this podcast, cash in the bank, and all of those things. Okay. Then if you look at behaviors, so in terms of my business, you're sticking with business as an example, what are the actions that I am or am not taking at the moment with my business? Let's say my business wasn't where I wanted it to be. Then I would have to start asking myself the questions, what is it that I'm doing or not doing at the moment? Remember, our behavior is what action we do or don't take. So what is it that I'm not doing that I could start doing? What is it that I could stop doing? And what are the actions around my business that I'm currently taking that are leading me to be in the place that I'm currently in? Action is required to get results. Okay, I'm just going to say that in case anybody listening to the podcast thinks we get magic wands or anything. We don't. Actions, what you do and don't get. It's one of the biggest misconceptions of things like the law of attraction and the secret and things like that is that people think, stuff just lands in your lap. It doesn't. You have to do something about it. Okay. So then you've got your skill and your capability. So at the moment in the area of my business, I might not have all the skills and capabilities that I need. Okay, great. So how am I going to get those? What is the lack of skill or capability that I currently have that means that that's getting in the way? What could I get better at? And how could skills or capabilities impact the results that are currently going on for me? Then you've got your beliefs. I mean, there's a whole host of beliefs that any one of us could have that may be impacting the results we're getting in an area of our lives. So, for example, beliefs like I'm not good enough, or like one of my coaching clients last week said to me when I was doing business coaching, but Laura, I'm a newbie. And I'm like, okay, right. These are beliefs and identity issues that this client has that I need to help her with. Or I'm not important. That would be a belief. I'm not good enough. There'll be all sorts of beliefs that are holding you in the place that you're currently in? And are those beliefs actually serving you, or could that be part of the problem? And then you've got your identity in relation to the problem. And if I was, starting out as a new business owner, for example, I'm a newbie might be the label that I give myself. Like I say, any I am statement is likely to lead you to an identity type statement. And when you look at the problem that you've been looking at, you're welcome, Mark. Welcome. Nice to see you. I've only just seen your comment. When you look at an area of your life, remember this whole podcast episode, okay, has been about working through a process. Okay. So when you are looking at the area of your life, it's not where you want it to be, and you start looking at these levels, I bet you that all of a sudden you're getting some kind of breakthrough in thinking about how you've ended up the way that you've ended up with this area of your life. Now, I can't remember who said it now, but it's not my quote. I mean, nothing much in personal development is original, right? Most things are rehashed. But I remember reading this, and I'm going to try and I scribbled it down very quickly the other day because I wanted to share it. And it goes like this: we must be the very thing that sets the out. Sorry, start again, Laura. Misreading my own handwriting. Take that back, right? We must be the very thing that gets the outcome that we want. The byproduct of who this person is. You see, how you see yourself, your identity, your beliefs, all the things we've been talking about, these are vital in terms of determining the results that you do or do not get in an area of your life, your view of yourself. Now, it's all very well doing that exercise going, okay, this is the area of my life that's not where I want it to be. I've asked myself all those questions, Laura, brilliant. I've now done the logical levels and I've done the pyramid, and that's given me much more insight. But this is still showing us our current state. And I want you to sit there and be really honest with yourself. Okay, objective observation. I've said this already. Objective observation. This is not about beating ourselves up. But if you look at that wheel and that pyramid, and I'm hoping if you haven't already, make some notes around the pyramid about this problem and our discussion that we've just had. And I want you to imagine nothing changes. Remember I said at the beginning of the episode, the biggest challenge that most people have is that they are unwilling to grow, change, and adapt. You see, if you are unwilling to change, grow, and adapt, I can tell you this will be what will happen in 6 months' time. This will be where you're at in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, and 5 years' time. Because, you see, this stuff that we've written down around this pyramid, think of it as the things that control your actions. They control what you think and feel. It's almost like our mind is like a computer, right? There's loads of robots everywhere. I was watching Deepak Chopra on social media this morning at the Technology Week in London, looking at his his technology dog he'd found. We're surrounded by robots and computers now, okay? But if you do nothing, then take it out into the future. Now, if you prefer to, you could close your eyes and do that. Now, if you're driving, operate machinery, again, refrain from doing so. But as you stare at those bits of paper and you say, okay, so how will my life be in 6 months' time if nothing changes? How will it be in a year's time if nothing changes? But let me into a secret. Nothing is not what will happen. Because if you don't change something, my probability for you is that the situation will get worse. It's not, if you think about any problem that you've had in your life that you've buried your head in the sand about, which you've chosen not to face into for all the plausible reasons, it didn't just stay the same, did it? Invariably, it got worse. Health and fitness, I've used as the example the majority of the time today. If I don't prioritize my health and fitness, it's not just going to stay the same in a year, 3-5 years time, is it? If I don't look after myself today, in 3-5 years time, my body's going to seize up. If I don't eat healthily, then, my blood pressure is going to go up. I'm going to get sick. And the problem is this: most people wait until the pain of being where they are is bad enough that they are forced to act. How many, be honest with yourself, how many of us have buried our head in the sand around a problem and just hoped that if we ignore it, it will go away? It doesn't. It doesn't. And then how many of us have got so sick, we've ended up in maybe hospital, or we've ended up in different situations, by the way, touch wood, refrain from taking that as a suggestion. But, what is it going to take? What is it going to take? Because most people are driven with what we call away from motivation. And if you were a master practitioner of mine, you'll know all about away from motivation. Until the pain of being where you are is bad enough, people seem unwilling to change. And I think that's sad. Because there is a possibility for you to make a decision. And as said at the very beginning of this podcast episode, that your life is a reflection of the decisions that you did or did not make. And we all have to have broad shoulders about that. It's not about judging ourselves. This is about objectively observing and being honest with ourselves about, where this is going to be in the future. Now, there's another way we can use this pyramid model. And I think we should do that now. So I want you to get another sheet of paper and I want you to redraw out that pyramid. I've run out of paper. I didn't have enough paper here today. Anyway, you get yourself another piece of paper and I want you to redraw out that pyramid. Okay, so just draw the pyramid, or the triangle, and then put your 4 lines in and write environment on the bottom run, behaviors in the middle run, skills and capabilities, beliefs and identity. Okay, just write the model on a fresh sheet of paper. And when you think about that area of your life where you want to make an improvement, so I was using health and well-being for mine as the example today, right? If you want to make an improvement in that area of your life, let's start from the top of the pyramid. Who do you need to be? Who do you need to be? Now, on your sheet of paper, I'd get this written down, right? So next to identity, who do I need to be? I what are your I ams? I am important might be one of your things for health. I'm important. My health and fitness is important. But what is your I am? What is your label that you're going to give yourself? Right now, if this was business and you're doing business, your identity might be, I am a kick-ass entrepreneur. I am an amazing coach. That might be your identity you give yourself at the very top. So think about the I am statements for you. If you're going to be the person, remember I said earlier, we must be the very thing that gets us the outcome that we want. Who do we need to be? That needs to go right at the top of our pyramid. Okay. Then you have to then come down and think, right, so what beliefs do I need? What are the beliefs that are going to support me to have that identity? What are the things that I need to believe? Now, if you're NLP trained or you're coming on one of my courses or whatever, you'll know exactly how to do a belief change. And so allow yourself to dream for a moment. Put your limitations to one side. What are the beliefs that you need to hold? Now, those of you done NLP practitioner training, you'll be familiar with empowering beliefs. So we talked earlier about limiting beliefs that hold you back or disempower you. Empowering beliefs are things that are going to support you. They're going to empower you. So what beliefs do you need in this area of your life that are going to help you to make the progress that you're looking to make in this area? Beliefs. I am important. do love myself. I love myself. I care for me. I care for my future. I don't know what they are, right? Beliefs. Okay, then you come down, okay, to skills and capabilities. What skills and capabilities do you need in order to enable you to realize the improvements that you want to have? Do you need to learn something? Do you need to go on a course? Do you need to go and get a coach? Do you need to find a mentor? Do you need to not necessarily start from scratch? Maybe you've already started, but maybe there's more training to be done. I've just invested another £10,000 in my own business education. Now, I've been in business for 10 years. If you're a student of mine, you'll know that I'm always readily sharing my business knowledge with everyone in my community when they come on board in our business academy and all of those things. And I love sharing what I'm learning. So we're never done. A lot of people will look at me, and I don't say this to beef myself up, but a lot of people will look at me and go, oh my goodness, Laura, you're a multi-award winning entrepreneur, and you clearly are running a really successful business and all of those things. Learning never stops. There's always stuff you can learn. I say to the students in the training, I learn from them as much as they learn from me every time I step into that training room. So your skills and capabilities. Okay. Now, that then comes down another level to your behaviors, your actions. Now, here's the funky thing about this model. Your identity, your beliefs, and your capabilities and your skills, those three things directly impact your behavior and your actions that you do or do not take. Because when you change your beliefs, you change your identity, you change your values and all the other things. By the way, there's a lot more that sits behind all of this, but let's just keep it simple. But when you make those mindset changes, your behaviors will start to change. And that's not to say you shouldn't consciously take action. Of course, absolutely. And that will also impact on your circumstances and your environment, because as I said earlier on, when you change your perspective, the things that you look at change because you change the way you look at them. Now, the second pyramid then, I'm really hoping, as I'm sat here in the office at home, I'm really hoping that this is giving you some massive breakthroughs and some massive insights into what you can do to shift this area of your life. Now, I now want you to take the second pyramid. And if that were to happen, if you made that happen, imagine the difference it would make in 6 months' time, in a year, 3 and 5 years' time to that area of your life. If you choose right now to make the decision that some of this stuff needs to happen. Now, not now because we're on a podcast and I'm fast running out of time, but in the future, tonight, tomorrow, I want you to really embellish this version 2 of the pyramid. And then I want you to really associate into it. Now, if you're into mindfulness, meditation, visualizations, whatever, you have got to bring this to life. If you've done an NLP course with me, I'm going to tell you, you need to go and write a well-formed outcome, i.e. a goal for this. Okay. And if you can get a colleague to clean your timeline and put the goal into your timeline, even better. Okay. And I know a lot of our students have buddies that they do ongoing personal development with each other, which is absolutely fantastic. If you're in one of my students and you're in the Facebook group in our community, then just put a post in there and say, look, anybody want a bit of practice? Let's do some stuff together. Let's help each other out. There is always a way to do that. Now, if you're not in our community, then you can come join our community if you want to come and do the training and you want to come and learn how to change beliefs and you want to change all of the stuff, because it's all about choices and decisions. That's where it comes from. It's all about choices and decisions. Let me give you a metaphor. If you've ever been on a boat, okay, a number of you will know that I used to love diving. I used to scuba dive regularly, absolute passion of mine. But if you've ever been in a boat when the anchors got stuck at the bottom of the seabed, if you think about that boat that's got a motor and that anchor is stuck fast at the bottom of the seabed, the only way that you can attempt to start to move that boat is to use all the power you have in the engine of that boat to overpower that and drag it. And if you've ever been on a boat that's dragging an anchor, you'll know what that feels like. I remember being on a boat once that was dragging its anchor, and they literally put the boat into full throttle. We hardly moved. The engines were going absolutely crazy because they were desperately trying to free the anchor. It takes huge effort. It takes huge amounts of energy, effort, time if you're metaphorically dragging your anchor. And I'm sure the students that will listen to this podcast episode, and we've got a few here live on the episode, so lovely to have you guys here. And also, I'm sure loads will listen in the future. Before they did their NLP training, I bet you they felt like they were metaphorically dragging their anchor in a whole host of areas of their life. But you see, when you do the mindset work and when you actually start to free yourself from the things that hold you back, the whole world becomes possible. I genuinely believe that every single human being has all the resources that they need to succeed. It's just I spend a lot of time in the training room and coaching, helping other people start to believe that's possible. And when you have the toolkit, you will start to realize that that's absolutely possible with NLP training and coaching and whatnot. But I want to go back as I start to move towards the end of the episode. I want to go back and talk a little more about the fact that one of the biggest challenges that most people have is they're not willing to make the choices and make the decisions that will enable them to grow, change, and adapt. We can sit here and do as many pyramids as we like. We can sit here and do any model that we like. But it all boils down to, are you gonna do something about it? Are you committed to making progress? And that doesn't necessarily mean you've got to come and do a course with me. I'd love you to, of course I would, because then I can really help you. And if it's not doing a course with me, what is it that you're going to do? What is it that you're going to do? You see, when you go back to secondary gain, when people gain more by holding on to problems or keeping the status quo, then they gain by letting it go. You have to start to understand that the brain and the mind doesn't do anything that isn't useful. The brain or mind doesn't do anything that it doesn't see as useful. Secondary gain has a use in an area of your life. And are you willing to make the change? Are you willing to let that story go that's keeping you stuck? Are you willing to let go of the current payoff or benefit that you gain by having your life the way it is so that you can be and do something and achieve something even better? A lot of people are very frazzled and very burnt out right now. There are only so many hours in the day. And the one thing that I seem to be telling people an awful lot in coaching at the moment is, what are you going to stop doing to create the time and space for this to happen? Because if you keep just adding and adding and adding and adding, then you're going to get burnt out. You have to do something different. Change your mindset. Let go of the stuff from the past. Stop dragging your metaphorical anchor. You see, a lot of people, I'm going to use another metaphor, a lot of people drift through life. It just is what it is, Laura. The problem is those people will end up metaphorically one day waking up and go, how did I end up here? You ended up there because of the choices and the decisions that you were or were not willing to take. Now, aside from all of that, let me talk very briefly, because secondary gain has a benefit. You've got to understand the benefit before you can start doing it. The one thing that, well, there's lots of things, but one of the key things that a great coach, particularly NLP coaches, can do for you is find you the root cause of the issue, and really get behind what's driving that behavior and start to make the changes at the mindset level that enable your behavior to start to change automatically. That's where the magic is, if there was any. There isn't any magic, by the way, but if there was, that's where you see people light up. But what really stops people, there are two things, in my opinion, that really stop people. And they are both born out of fear. When you stop to ask yourself the question, what are you really afraid of? What are you really afraid of? If you were to make that change and you know what you need to do and you know what's possible and you know all of that stuff, what is it that stops you, that keeps you stuck? What are you really afraid of? Because most people, they'll say that their secondary gain story is about protecting them, keeping them safe, all of those things. The two things that come up time and time again when I listen to people is people are afraid of failure, and they are afraid of judgment. They are two things that keep people stuck. They are afraid of failing, and they are afraid of being judged. Now, when you've done your NLP training, you don't worry so much about those things. But life before NLP for me was very much about those two things. People, let's do one at a time. We'll do failure, then we'll do judgment. Failure. So many people over the years that I have trained and coached, they don't always use the words, I fear failure. But a lot of the reason that people are stuck, the reason that people don't take the action is because they fear failing. I won't even put my hat in the ring because what if I fail? Now, some of that's about judgment, which we'll come on to. But if you want to go after what you want, you have to accept that you may fail, right? I tell you now, if I gave up the first time I failed in business, I would not be here today. I fail regularly in my business. I fail regularly because the thing is, you've got to be in the arena to be able to stand a chance of getting the outcome that you want. But if you're too scared to even step into the arena, then you're always going to stay stuck. What stops you stepping in the arena? Fear. And sometimes that's because of failure. You see, the thing is this. There are two possible outcomes if ever you take any action. Two possible outcomes. You either step in the arena and get that result. Happy days. If you step into the arena and you have a go at doing it, if you fail, in inverted commas, because I don't actually believe it exists, but anyway, that's a whole other story. But if you fail, there's always a lesson. There is always a lesson. So you either win because you do it or you learn something. Let me tell you a story from the training room. You, if you follow me on social media, will know all about the fact we do board breaks on our Master Prac program. And sometimes people don't break their boards. And I always say to people, when you do your board break on Master Prac, you win either way. Because you either win because you broke the board, and that's all really exciting and amazing, and loads of us have got broken boards at the master practitioners. And if you don't break it, you learn something. Right now, in board breaking, it's usually you'll learn something about yourself in terms of following processes, learnings around commitment, all that kind of stuff. But you learn something. Now, whether you believe in the universe or not, you'll know that life is a cyclical process. I remember a managing director telling me many, many years ago when I just started out after uni, Laura, I'm sick and tired of people not attempting to change things. And I want people to know that it's okay to fail. Right now, there was cultural issues in that organisation. There was consequences to failing, but we'll put that to one side. But he said, I want people to do things differently. I want them to give it a go. And if you fail the first time, I'm going to say, what did you learn? You fail a second time, I'm going to go, what didn't you learn last time that you need to learn this time? And if you fail a third time, then we're going to have a conversation, right, at work. But if you believe in the universe, let me say this to you. The universe will send you messages. And the first time it will send you messages which create a little ripple, like you're dropping a little pebble into a pond or into a lake. You'll get a little ripple. And if you don't take the learning, then it will start throwing a rock in. Okay, so you don't take the learning, your unconscious mind, universe, whatever you believe, will give you another learning. And this time it's not just a pebble dropped in the water, it's a rock. And if you drop a rock in a pond, you'll know that creates more waves. And if you still don't learn, it will drop a boulder in the pond. If you ever drop the boulder in the pond, you'll know what a mess that makes. You see, when you are in the arena, you stand a chance of winning. You stand a chance of getting that result. And if you don't, you will get a lesson. But if you mask that lesson as a failure, it will stop you from having another attempt. You will keep getting the same lesson until you take the lesson. I've learned that the hard way. But fearing failure stops so many people. But when you reframe it in your head and go, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go, because the chances of the upside are massive and really positive. And if it doesn't work, then I'm going to take the lesson. I'm going to take the lesson. I'm going to think about, what am I going to do differently next time? This goes back to the point at the beginning of the podcast about growing, changing, and adapting. Take the lesson. Take the lesson and apply the lesson. And then you've got nothing to fear, because you either achieve it or you learn something. Just make sure you take the lesson, though, right? Don't keep making the same mistake over and over again. And there are lots of people I know that do that. Failure's doesn't really exist. Not in my head anyway. Might for you, but doesn't for me. The other thing I said that stops people is judgment. People do not like being judged. Guess what? You're being judged anyway. So you might as well get in the ring and give yourself a chance. You're being judged anyway. We're all being judged every minute of every day. And here's the news. We all do it too. We all do it too. We look at other people that were around us in our head. We make judgments. Do you know what? You're doing just fine. And everybody will get judged. Everybody will judge others. Like, we like to think that we're lovely, nice people and we don't judge other people. We do. We look around all the time. Oh, when I done it like that. Or, oh, have you seen her or seen him? Or, it's innocent little comments, but they're all judgments. So if people are going to judge you anyway, then have a go. I mean, let me use the example of health and fitness, right? Joining a gym. Let's use that as an example, because again, health and fitness is something that a lot of us can relate to. A lot of people will not prioritize their health and fitness because they believe they have to go to a gym, and they don't want to go to the gym because they don't want to be judged. Right? You go into the gym. There's a gym not far from where I live. Right. And I went in and I felt intimidated. There were lots of people there, all very fit individuals, beautiful looking people, all clearly very good at what they were doing. And I felt intimidated. I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want to. This goes back to the pyramid. I didn't have the skill or the capability. I didn't believe I could. And I didn't believe I should be there. And I didn't want to be judged. So I didn't go. Never went back. Judgment is, you're giving away your power when you fear being judged. And it's unimportant what anybody else thinks of you. There's an old saying, isn't it, that goes around, what anybody else thinks about you is none of your business. Because if you're going to spend the rest of your life worrying about what other people think of you, worrying about other people judging you, then you're going to have a pretty miserable life. But I understand it. I understand it. I do understand it. But when you do NLP training, the fear of failure and the fear of judgment, very rarely does that creep up anymore. And if it does, I have a toolkit to help me to fix it. I do not believe that with personal development, any of us are ever what I call done. We're all work in progress. And I say this at the start of every single course I run and have ever run and I will ever run in the future. I am work in progress too. Don't think that just because I've been training NLP and I've been doing this for over 10 years now, that I am perfect. Far from it. But what I will tell you is this. I've got a whole toolkit behind me that helps me to improve the quality of my life, to help me make decisions that work or don't work. I mean, those of you trained in NLP will all know about parts integration. I mean, that's going to stop people making decisions right there. We spend a lot of time doing belief changes, resolving people's internal conflicts so that they can make the decision that is right for them. That we do free them from the past, so they're not dragging their anchor anymore with all that unresolved negative emotions from the past. We do empower people to learn new skills, new mindset skills that will help them to go on to achieve the things that they want to achieve, to help them change the way they look at things so that the things they look at start to change in their eyes when they change their perceptions. And that's why I love doing what I'm doing. Now, I'm conscious that, oh my goodness, this episode has already turned into an hour and 15 minutes. I hope today's podcast episode has given you some kind of breakthrough. I genuinely do. And if you're joining me live, please let me know in the comments. How is today's podcast episode? Because it's been a more work in progress type, let's do some stuff together. Let's focus on an area of our life. Let's make some observations of that. Let's look at what's driving that and understanding all that. And I genuinely hope that today's podcast episode has been of massive value to you. I will be suggesting that all our students listen to it as I go forward. I often recommend that they listen to the podcast as CPD. And I will definitely be recommending this because this is, I don't know what you want to call it, peak performance coaching, whether you want to call it life coaching, whether you want to call it transformational coaching. But your mindset is absolutely critical to the results that you get in any area of your life. And if there is an area of your life that is not currently where you want it to be, then I go back to the question at the very beginning. What are you willing to do? Because if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So Liz, I absolutely love it. Liz just said in the chat, very good, Laura, needed to hear this. Liz, thank you so much. Lovely to have you with me here live today. Yeah, Debbie said, lovely to see you, Laura. Debbie, lovely to see you too. Mark's been here. Simple but so impactful and effective. Thank you, Laura. Hashtag getting my Laura fix. I love it. Yeah, now obviously if you're watching this live, you'll know that you can come back and watch the video anytime. If you are listening to this on the usual podcast platforms after I have released it, you'll know that you can go and watch this version on YouTube and actually see me and see the diagrams that I've been joining. So you're very welcome to go over onto YouTube, Unleash Your Potential. If you go into YouTube and just type in Laura Evans NLP Unleash Your Potential, something like that, you'll find the channel and you'll be able to watch the video. And I will do a couple of templates. I think that would be useful before I launch it properly. So if you're watching this after the official release, if you go over to nlptalks.com, I'm going to put a wheel of life and I'm going to do a little worksheet with the pyramid on because I think that would really help everyone. So if you're listening to this after the official release, then go on over to nlptalks.com, find this podcast episode, and then you can download the PDFs if that is helpful. If you would like to come and do some NLP training, if you've listened to me today thinking, oh my goodness, I need more of Laura in my life, and and I really want to get my mindset in the right place, and I want to know if doing an NLP practitioner course is right for me. Maybe you want to be able to do the kind of things I do as a coach, and you want to become a certified NLP coach or a certified NLP master coach. We've had a couple of the master coaches here today doing some CPD, listening to this episode, which is great. But if you want to help other people get unstuck, and if you want to help other people work out how they can make the changes that they need to make, then becoming a certified NLP coach or a certified NLP master coach is certainly where it's at. So if you want to find out more about our trainings, then go on over to our website, unleashyourpotential.org.uk, and you'll find information about all the courses there. If not, drop us an email, info@unleashyourpotential.org.uk, and email Lynn in the office, and she will gladly set up either a Zoom call or a phone call with you to talk about the courses that we have, and how they may be able to help you. And if after that you decide it's not for you, great, we'll wish you well. And if it is, then of course that means you get to come and train with me live. We are running NLP practitioner courses online, so you can join us from anywhere in the world. We've had a lady sign up today who's joining us from the States, so that will be super exciting. We've had students from all the way around the world, which is great. Or if you prefer to train in person, then you can come join me in Cardiff here in the UK. Our next NLP practitioner course is coming up in September. Another one in November in Cardiff. And I'm doing an online prac course at the end of June, and then one again over September and October. So there is always courses available whenever you listen to this podcast episode. So just get in touch, info@unleashyourpotential.org.uk, and we can chat with you about what's available. If you're looking for a coach and you would like to work with me one-to-one, then drop Lynn an email as well, or go on over to thelauraevans.co.uk. And have a look at that website and get in contact. I only ever work with a very small number of clients one-to-one, but if you would like to do that, then you are very welcome to reach out, and we can explore whether that's something that might help. So I am going to love you and leave you and remind you that your life is a reflection of the decisions that you did or didn't make. The question is, are you willing to do what it takes? With love to all of you. Take care, and I'll see you soon.